Welcome back to another edition of the Draft Dynasty Podcast. My name is Jeremy Betts. I've got a special guest with me today to break down some fantasy talk, some NFL betting talk, some futures, some totals. We're going to break it all down here with Pez from Pez's Picks here on the Fans First Sports Network. Pez, how you doing tonight?
I mean, you have the best name in the gambling business. It's
Hey,
bets.
you
I
got
mean,
it.
it's bets time all the time with Pez's Picks, Jeremy. And we appreciate you having us on. Fantasy football has legitimized gambling. It's something I used to have to kind of hide from legitimate people I knew, and
Sure.
whether I was calling them in or taking the calls. Fantasy football is why we've legalized gambling, and in my opinion, it's become an acceptable vice, I guess. It's no different than
Yeah.
alcohol at this point. Probably less damaging unless you lose the house, Jeremy. And we're not trying to let anybody have that happen. We don't lose in Penzance Pay.
Right. That's right. We don't lose with Pez's Picks, and for me it's it's small time stuff right now. So ain't no houses going on here. It's $5
Good.
here. It's $5 there. And been a big fantasy fan for basically as long as I've been a true blue football fan. And we were talking pre-show. You've been in that side of the game for a while too, and you're absolutely right. The bleed over, it's blurred lines all over the place when it comes to fantasy and the gambling side of things, and when it comes to DFS and even we were talking pre-show about this too, making your fantasy rosters, trying to determine some of the betting odds and some of the situations, and checking in on the books to see what guys are projected for. It's a good way to build out rosters and build out expectations as well. So let me start out with this before we get into anything too specific. Let me ask you how you do fantasy football, how you approach betting, and like some of the maybe simple things that you do to attack that area when you're ready to play.
Well, I hate to lead the kids on here a little bit, Jeremy, but fantasy football is probably some sort of one of those channel drugs that would lead you to really bad things. If you're into fantasy football, I suggest you stick with it. Sports gambling is an entirely different animal. It's something you're wagering money every week. I know with fantasy you can
Sure.
pick teams and there's success with that and you don't have to wager a lot. But I go back to the 80s with Tecmo Bowl where I would sit around
Right.
and play the Nintendo game with my friends. And that's kind of how it got us into fantasy football. We were checking the newspaper. We were checking Sports Center at night to kind of get stats. And that kind of led us into this gambling world that we're all now a part of, which I think if you do it for fun, you can be responsible about it. Nobody should be betting their
Yeah.
house or their pink slip or what have you. And of course, I've had some associates get involved in ththings like this, and these are bad things. So I love fantasy sports. I think it's a great way to get more people involved in watching the game. And truly, I mean, it is gambling. I mean, this is something that's
Yeah.
always been kind of a wink and a nod. Fantasy is legal, but you can't put a $50 bet in on the Steelers. So I'm glad that we've kind of gotten the hypocrisy out of the picture here. And sports gambling should be legal. The players get paid enough. Yeah, no
Yeah.
one's given somebody $50 million to throw one game at this point. So I think it's important for people bet with your head not above it. That's a big line out of Atlantic
Yeah.
City where I grew up as well. And I with fantasy, it's something that the only danger with fantasy football and what we're talking about today with season bets and long term investments and season totals and things like this. Injuries are a death blow. I mean, I've been in
Yeah.
it in fantasy football. You lose your running back, you lose your quarterback. I mean, you're really screwed. And same thing with the seasonal bet. So we try to take all that into account: the health, the age, the offensive line, the age of the running back. I mean, 30 is the break-off point in terms of fantasy football and in terms of gambling and et cetera. So all these things we take into account when we put out a bet, and we're here to help, Jerry. We're here to make people money.
Right.
I hope everybody, with this fantasy, all the followers, any fantasy team they pick, consult us, Jeremy. Consult us. We'll help them out.
That's
Maybe
right.
we get a little kickback, a little taste. We call it in South Philly. A little taste would be nice to the host here, to the experts.
That's right. Hit us up. We're both out there, right? You're definitely out there, and you've got quite a following already with Pez's Picks, and that's great. And that as we transition into maybe some of the talking points about specific players and teams and whatnot. Okay, you're an Eagles fan, right? You
Absolutely.
are you born and raised Philadelphia, or is or that area? How's that happen?
So strange kind of background. Parents grew up in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is kind
Okay.
of near
Yep.
Jim Thorpe, a little bit in between Philly and Pittsburgh territory.
Yep.
Believe it or not, and I don't let this out a lot, Jeremy. I hope the Eagles fans don't dig this up, but my mom has a 4-year-old picture of me in a Steelers jacket with the
Hey.
yellow leather sleeves and,
Oh
and
yeah.
the felt with the star and on the over the heart there, and was a bit. Well, I was a huge fan. Terry Bradshaw was a huge fan. Immaculate
Yeah.
Reception. I mean, I grew up, as a baby, as a little guy. Then I transitioned to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm sorry to say, but for the Pittsburgh people, I cheer for the Steelers. Every year,
Sure.
my dream is the Steelers Eagles Super Bowl. I'm going to be bleeding green, but I respect the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. I think the coach, the ownership, the way that team plays hard nosed football, defense, tick the
Yeah.
clock. I love it, and I respect the fans. I think Pennsylvania breeds a strong football community. Penn State,
Yep.
Pittsburgh Steelers, Philadelphia Eagles, and I love everything about what Pittsburgh does.
Yeah, my dad's from Pittsburgh, born and raised, 18 years, then joined the military, and that's all I knew, right? Was Steelers ball, and my mom's kind of she's a Georgia peach, so she brought some of the Atlanta Falcons in there with her. So if I had to pick a
Okay,
second team, it'd probably be Atlanta. And you know what? When I first like my formative years in the sport was, the heartbreaks of some of those early 2000 Steelers teams where they got so close and they couldn't quite get over the hump, and then you get that first round pick, 11th overall, and you land Ben Roethlisberger and 15-1. I mean, a loss in the AFC Championship game. I was hooked right then. But Pez, that year it was Patriots and Steelers in the AFC Championship, and it was Donovan McNabb and your Eagles against
oh,
the Michael Vick Atlanta Falcons, and I was like, man, we're gonna get Steelers Falcons Super Bowl, and instead it was both the other teams. And then you had a rough end to that season. I know that. So, but formative years there. I almost got my Steelers Falcons right away.
well, we refer to the Falcons as the Dirty Bird in
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I mean, we're the true Eagles, but that I remember those years. I lost some money on that Super Bowl, unfortunately, at the time. I was gambling pretty heavy, of course, and Pittsburgh or Philadelphia Super Bowl. I talk about this a lot on Pez's Picks. The FFSN, the Fans First Sports Network legal team, we're filing charges, Jeremy. I don't know if everybody knows this, but they reviewed the pregame tapes. Tom Brady and
Ah.
the
Yep.
the death blow Patriots. They stole our pregame. Having said that, McNabb, I blame him for losing that game. I think if we have Michael Vick in that Super Bowl, we probably win that Super Bowl. I still believe that.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. Mike Vick ends up being an Eagle, and all those fun years with him there too, and so much overlap. It's such a fun sport, man. It really is. And so let's dive into this. Let's start with maybe some Eagles and Steelers, since we're kind of coming from that area of things, and your Eagles coming off a Super Bowl win. There's been a lot of talk like. Saquon Barkley. If we had to focus in on one player here, Saquon Barkley had more touches in a season than maybe ever, or at least up there with some of the greats. And usually the next year isn't so hot for guys like that. He made the Madden cover. I mean, all the things, all the curses maybe going against him. Are you still pretty confident in some of his odds going into this season to have a big year?
I wouldn't be confident to say. Well, I don't think his odds right now are the greatest odds for
Right.
rushing lead. When we bet a team season total, we look at a lot differently than we look at individual players' season total. Um, Individual players, there's so much riding uh, on just that one person. You kind of want to get good return if you're going to invest money on that. When we look at Saquon, I mean, he's at a plus 270. Everything you said about him last year, all the touches he had, the wear and tear. Can the guy do it again? I'm not saying he can't. And I know last year his touches, his yardage, close to breaking the regular season record, and he sits out that last game for the team, which was an amazing team kind of guy. That's why we win the Super Bowl. We have guys
Yeah.
like that. But Saquon, I believe, had over 1,000 yards rushing before contact. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of those yards were in disguise. He had a lot of breakaway runs. Having said that, I don't think plus 270 is a good return on anybody. to take right now in June for a season leader. I just don't think that's a wise investment. Could he do it? Sure. Could Derrick Henry do it? Sure. But both guys are getting old. Both guys have taken a lot of shots. Some of the more valuable, or what we call a value play in the gambling world, a value play meaning our system, our algorithm, whatever it may be, we think there's more value to the amount that you're getting back in return. So I think Robinson in Atlanta at plus 1,200, a very strong play. And a guy that I love, Josh Jacobs, and I had to make sure before I put this out there tonight, 27 years old, well below that 30-year-old Mendoza line for running backs after 30. Quality and performance goes down significantly. I think Josh Jacobs, they keep him healthy. They're going to pound the ball. I think they learned last year from the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't let that quarterback get beat up. Jordan Love had a horrible physical year last year. The Eagles, I don't know if this is our rated show, but they beat the shit out of him in game one, Jeremy. So I don't think he was ever the same again. I think this year they're going to lean on Jacobs. And I think at plus 2,000, that's a high value play right now and a quality player. Of course, health is a big thing for everybody, but I think that team's ready to kind of make a run this year.
That's good stuff. And as someone fairly new to trying values and seeing what the good plays are, like sometimes you want to win easy, right? You don't want to work too hard for it. Sometimes you want to make some of those longer odds bets, and balancing that is something I struggle with right now as a kind of new in the game. This is maybe my third year. And North Carolina, it's only been legal here in North Carolina for 2 seasons now. So, we've had to work around that. And so
sure.
there's some things that I'm still learning with that, but value, and it translates over to fantasy when you're talking value. Like I look at, like some of the receivers out there that you've got so many good receivers in the league these days, and you're trying to find in fantasy, you're trying to find that guy that maybe you can get in the middle of your draft that can put you over the edge, or maybe towards the back end of the 4th, 5th, 6th round, something like that, where it's maybe a starting wide receiver, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities, but he's just not up there ranked with the high end guys. And that a guy like Rashee Rice is a guy that presents good value to me from a fantasy perspective. So I wonder, Pez, as you're looking across the league, what are some of your favorite value picks at receiver potentially for this upcoming season?
So in Pez's picks, our algorithm for NFL wagering is all about the quarterback position. I mean, everybody knows this. If you watch football, the quarterback is treated differently. Without an elite quarterback, whether it be rushing, throwing, or a combination hybrid kind of guy, you have to have an elite quarterback. So to bet a receiver to be the leader, you're also betting on the quarterback. And I think when we look down this list, Jamar Chase, an amazing player. I don't think that scenario is going to help that team. I think that's trouble. I think Burrow kind of bullied his way to get top 2 receivers. The line's not going to be much better. Running game's not going to be much better. Nico Collins at plus 750, interesting play. We're banking on that quarterback kind of making a rebound and having a better year this year. I'd never bet the Dallas Cockroaches or Cowboys, whatever you want to call them. CeeDee Lamb, I think that locker room's a nightmare. So we can go down pretty far in this list until we start looking at players where I think have a legitimate shot. I think A.J. Brown plus 2,000, Philadelphia Eagle. I think Jalen Hurts proved in the Super Bowl he's an elite thrower if he needs to be. I don't think they're going to rush Saquon as much as they did last year. I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more. Interesting play right there. Now, those odds I would think would be bigger, but I think the bookmakers also kind of have a lean that Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw the ball more if they're going to get back there. They can't count on Saquon as much as they did. I think another interesting play, and the Steelers fans are going to like this, I believe at plus 4,000, we can get DK Metcalf. And I think that's actually plus 6,000, DK Metcalf. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers got Aaron Rodgers to throw the ball, right? I mean, this isn't a guy that you're going to run the option with. He's not he's not an RPO guy. And DK Metcalf, we did some research on this guy. I believe the lowest season total he's had is like 930 yards. So we're looking at a 1,000-yard yearly guy, has never had a really great throwing quarterback, whether it be Wilson or whether it be Geno. Aaron Rodgers, from everything I'm reading and what we looked at the end of last year, the zip on his ball, the velocity on his ball is back. The Achilles seems to not be an issue in preseason so far. I think Aaron Rodgers and Metcalf could have a huge year. I think the offensive line is stable. I think that team is a Super Bowl contender. So we like to bet Super Bowl contenders. We like to bet teams that are going to score points. I know this might sound stupid with the Pittsburgh Steelers having an offense who's been limping around for 5 years since Ben left, or 6 years. But at the end of the day, I think this year they score points. DK Metcalf is a guy that is very difficult to stop. And Aaron Rodgers, one of the most accurate, if not the most accurate quarterback in the history of the league. I love that combination. At plus 6,000, that means for $10 you win 600. I mean, you want to bet the full 100 to win 6,000. Good luck. That's a passionate play. That's a lot of Primanti brothers if you hit that. I think that's a year of Primanti bros and French fries topping out of that sandwich, which I love. So I'm a huge DK Metcalf value play at that position right now.
I like that a lot. I really do. And when I look at some of the odds here too, for George Pickens, he's clearly a wide receiver too over in Dallas, and his odds are even lighter, right, than DK's to get there. And DK's clearly the one there. There's a bunch of wide receiver twos up on this list with shorter odds than DK, and I think that represents great value. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Adams, who good players, they're not leading the league in receiving this year.
I don't
the second
think
best
so.
receivers on their teams. So,
and there's some interesting when you look at the top of this. Malik Neighbors plus 1,000, Justin Jefferson plus 750. When we're betting players like that, what's the quarterback situation? Is J.J. McCarthy going to come in and be able to gun that ball out to have the leading receiver in the league? Possibly. That doesn't mean they're going to win games, right? Sometimes when you bet these individual players, when you pick a fantasy team, especially on the offensive end, you might want to bet a team that you think is going to be losing a lot of games because they're going to keep airing that ball out. The one problem with Pittsburgh Steelers fantasy players, inevitably the Pittsburgh Steelers tick that clock. They get up a score, 2 scores, and I know it drives Steelers fans crazy. They're going to pound that ball. They'd rather punt than try and force points. And so these are all things I think you have to take into account when you're making these long-term bets and especially when you're drafting the fantasy team in the same regard.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get to our break, and after the break, we'll get into some like team specific talk. Are there any other players? I don't care what position, what the the bet is necessarily, but anybody else that you really like as a good value play across the league? I know you guys have been looking at the AFC North and some of the AFC teams recently on your show. Anything specific from some of your studies that you want to share here with us for some good values?
Well, for our last player prop, for most regular season passing TDs, Josh Allen at plus 1,600, I think is the value play of a quarterback position right now. I think this is it for this team. They've invested heavily in the offensive line. They've tried to beef up to help this guy out. I mean, he's played that position as good as anybody has played in the last 20 years. So I think that's a huge value play. Lamar, Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Burrow, all guys in front of him. Guys that are getting older, and Burrow not getting older, but guys with question marks about their team and about how they're formed. So I love Josh Allen at plus 1,600. In terms of our season total plays, in terms of teams, we go by division. We're going to go throughout, for the next month and into August. We've so far released Steelers 8.5 over, Browns 5.5 over, Baltimore Ravens 11.5. We've taken the under, and the Bengals were not making a play. Jeremy, there's one rule in gambling. You should not put bets in when you're consuming alcohol. That's a bad situation. That's why the casinos give it to you for free. You should not bet for and against players when you have a huge emotion. I try not to bet the Philadelphia Eagles too much because I've got emotion. There are players and teams out there that I dislike, Joe Burrow being one of them. I try not to bet for or against that guy because I know in the back of my mind I don't like him. So no play there. And I do think there's a lot of risk in how that team was formed. Bills, no play. The juice, as we call it, or the vig, the amount of money you have to pay to kind of win your bet. Yeah. Generally, it's about 10% in the regular market. In this one, I saw 155 to 160 on every 100 you had to bet. So that's a no play for the Bills. Jets, 5.5. We're taking the over. And Miami, 8.5. We're taking the under. So we've released about a quarter of the teams so far, and we're punching the numbers. And some of these teams we like to wait a little bit and kind of see how free agency and make sure guys are signed in camp as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure, part of y'all's discussion was the Rodgers saga and was he going to actually sign? Like for the Steelers, that the fact that win total didn't go up at all after the Rodgers signing, you have to like that if you're betting those odds.
Well, I would agree with you, but I've been on the other side of being a gambler. I've been the guy in the office taking calls, and whether it be offshore or maybe in the United States, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it, get anybody in trouble, Jeremy, but I guess now it's legal. We can, right? So I know that 8.5 line not moving, that meant they know Rodgers was coming. I think Tomlin knew. I think Rodgers knew. They leaked that information out. We're not going to get it reported on ESPN. Pat McAfee wasn't letting out, but I think there were whispers that Rodgers was coming back. He was playing. The Steelers did not panic, and I think they would have had they not known. I think there was not as much mystery as there was to the public. So I think that 8.5 is about solid. I mean, as you know, the last 20 years, Tomlin has not finished worse than 500. To take the Pittsburgh Steelers to go 500 or better, I think is the easiest bet every year, right? Especially this year, just by heart alone. I mean, look at the quarterback situation last year. They still covered the spread. They still got well above their total. I believe it was 8 or 7.5. So I love them at 8.5. I think that is the NFL team season total. I mean, that's the play to make right now. I don't think Tomlin and Rodgers are going out chumps, and I can't wait to see this. I can't wait to see them play.
I like it. I like it a lot. We'll get to a little bit more here after our break. Don't go anywhere. The second half of the Draft Dynasty podcast. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the second half of the Draft Dynasty podcast. Jeremy Betts, Pez from Pez's Picks, joining the show this week. We appreciate it. Pez, I want to ask you now, we've talked about some of maybe your favorite values and things like that for some of the players. And I wanted to ask you about a team specifically that's been putting up just incredible numbers offensively for the last few years. That's the Detroit Lions. And there's a lot of high expectations for those guys again this year, but there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of change in that organization. Does that give you pause when it comes to betting these guys and some of the futures here? I mean, I look at some of the season leaders props and like Jared Goff is way up there when it comes to passing yardage leaders. Guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown have I wouldn't say great value odds to win or to be like the receiving yardage leaders at the end of the year. Does a lot of turnover like that, and you went through this as an Eagles fan just a couple years ago, losing both your offensive and defensive coordinators, and things didn't work out super great. I guess that happened again, and then you won a Super Bowl too. So that it can be very variable in those situations. But how do you feel about the Lions this year?
I love Dan Campbell. I think he is the epitome of an NFL football coach at this point. I love everything that guy does. Jared Goff, I love him. I'm not sure if he's a quarterback that can get them over to that next level. I think getting to the Super Bowl or getting close to a Super Bowl, it maybe 10 guys in the world can be a quarterback and do that. But to win a Super Bowl, we probably cut that number in half. It's just an extra step that somebody has to take, extra pressure. I don't like their receiving core. I think they should have helped him out more. Running back, decent situation they have there. I know Hutchinson last year, that injury really hurt that team. It's a puzzling team, the Detroit Lions. They cover over 70% of regular season games. So from a betting perspective, Jeff Hartman, who I do Pez's Picks, my show with, he every week he'd say, "Are we taking the Lions?" Stop betting them because they covered so much. Yeah. I had to check myself and think, am I just betting them because they're a guarantee? I think the one problem when you have a Goff and you have a dome team, if they have to go outside in the playoffs, that's a brutal change for a dome team to do, especially in the middle of winter. If they've got to go to a cold climate, that's very difficult, or really to play outside at all. So I think that's one notch against them. I do like their offense. I think in terms of fantasy offensively, any player on that team is a solid bet. They're going to put points up. I mean, we know they're going to put points up. Will their defense be a little better? Hutchinson being healthy, probably. I think they're going to find a way to win. They're going to score a lot of points. I don't know if that equates to a Super Bowl, but they definitely, in terms of fantasy, Goff,
Mhm.
Amon St. Brown, any of these guys are a solid play.
Okay, I like it. So the trust really is in Campbell to keep that ship steady, and I mean they've got a really good roster. I mean, they draft well, they develop well, they make the right moves. It seems like every offseason. I do agree with you. They probably could have given Amon-Ra St. Brown some more help in the passing game at receiver. They under Ben Johnson, they were so slot heavy with their targets. But Jamison Williams seems like a pretty good value play in fantasy for sure, where you can get him. I don't know if that's the same in the betting markets necessarily for yardage and some of his like over unders for these guys individually. Um, but the Lions overall, I think if you do trust Dan Campbell, as kind of the real catalyst behind what this team has been able to accomplish the last few years, then yeah, you would feel pretty comfortable riding with some of those players again this year.
And there's a tactic in fantasy. I mean, I'm going back a long time here. A team that's going to score a lot of points that has a two-headed monster at running back. When we're looking at Gibbs and Montgomery, it might behoove someone to take both. I mean, when
Yeah,
you look at the numbers they put up last year, I believe they had 30 combined touchdowns. I mean, probably about 2,500 to 3,000 yards. I think this year they're going to rely more on the running game if they're smart. And I know Dan Campbell wants to win, and everybody wants to win, right? So I think the one thing that they have to do is slow the game down a little bit more of a Pittsburgh style, Philadelphia Eagles style. They got to tick the clock. I think you're going to get more running back value this year than we even got last year. And we got huge numbers out of those two running backs. I think both of them are great fantasy picks, and if you can get
yeah,
both, I think that's a value team right there. And of course, then you're putting all your eggs in one basket with one team, and the quarterback goes down, but et cetera. I think that is a strong play, and I think the running game is going to be bigger in Detroit than it has been the last couple of years. I think they've learned their lessons. You can't win shootout football into the Super Bowl. You got to at some point, even the Kansas City Chiefs slow the game down. You got to play defense. You got to tick the clock. You got to take the air out of the game at some point, be able to
yeah,
control things.
yeah, absolutely. It's how you win. I mean, you got to keep doing that if you want to keep winning. I don't know if you've played in any best ball leagues for fantasy yet, have you?
I have not.
Okay, so in best ball leagues, the stacks are really important because basically you draft your team, right, and then whoever the highest performer is each week at the position, that's what goes into your point total for your roster. So you don't have to set your lineups every week; it just automatically goes in whoever gets the highest at each position that's on your roster. And by the end of
Okay.
the season, if you rank in the top four in your individual league, if you will, then you move on to the playoffs, and there's payouts at the end from the playoff portion of the regular season. One of my favorite stacks, and it's hard to get, but I did get one on Underdog Fantasy. I got Saquon Barkley and I got Jalen Hurts, and I love
Whew.
that stack because of the touchdowns on the goal line. One of those two guys, if it gets down to the 1 yard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yard line, one of those two guys is typically getting the score. And now I'm basically guaranteed whoever gets it, I'm getting those points. And I would say that that's a fun stack if you're willing to go quarterback that early, even in standard redraft leagues as well. That seems like fun.
Well, going back in my decades, and in the gambling world, we have a lot of associates, Jeremy, especially outside of Philadelphia, and everybody's got
Sure.
some sort of code name. So I refer to this guy as the Action Man. He is a fantasy guru. He has taught me over the years. You start with running backs; they are guaranteed
Yeah.
to get the ball. And I think in this situation in the league now, you've got to go running back, quarterback in the first 1 or 2 rounds. If you don't get an elite quarterback or running back in the first 2 rounds, I think your fantasy chances are or you might as well just hang the team up and put it on auto roster at that point. So I think
Yeah.
running back more underrated now than they've ever been. I think what we learned with Saquon last year that teams are going to start investing back in the running back. I think we're going to see money going away from receiver. back into running back. I think this could be a huge fantasy running back league this year, more than it's been the last 5. I think the league kind of has ebbs and flows in the NFL. I think we're going to see a little bit more running the ball, a little less airing the ball out. Teams can't afford it, right? If you've got receivers demanding $35 million a season, that's just too much. So you got to figure out another winning recipe. When you look at the Bengals, they've got over $100 million a year in quarterback and receiving. Too much, in my opinion. So I think we get back to running the ball. And I love the two-headed monster in Detroit. I love both those guys. I think they are point scorers guaranteed.
Yeah, I agree. One two-headed monster that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year, and I think you can get at a good discount, is that Steelers backfield too. Jalen Warren and Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson, I think, has a chance to be Najee Harris plus in year 1 as a rookie, and they're going to rely on him to do that. And Jalen Warren has proven that he can handle a little bit larger workload. I mean, by the end of the season last year, the second half of the season, he was out snapping Najee Harris on a weekly basis, and he handles the third down duties. And Aaron Rodgers is going to work the backs out of the backfield on dump offs and things like that too. So I like that backfield as well. For fantasy, how would you say that backfield rates as a two-headed monster for betting as well?
I think when we look to bet the Steelers, it's more system, it's more atmosphere. A home field advantage for Pittsburgh is a huge thing. I think the one thing with Pittsburgh that's tough is they're going to be able to do a lot of different things. Aaron Rodgers can hand that ball off like nobody's biz, and they're going to be, trying to shut him down, and they're going to, the box isn't going to be as loaded. So I think it's going to be tough. I think the Eagles are in the same situation. Teams that can do things, it's kind of tough to nail down. Are they going to run the ball? Are they going to throw the ball? I like a situation more like in Atlanta, a situation more where you're going to have definitely you're going to be handing the ball off a lot, even though I love the quarterback down there, but he's basically going to be a rookie. So veteran teams with veteran quarterbacks, I think it's tougher to nail down. Is that running back going to be a value play? I do like Josh Jacobs in this situation. I think they learn with Love. They got to keep that guy healthy. They can't let him run around and get hurt. And I think with the Chiefs as well, we're going to see a little bit more of a return to the running game. I don't know if it's Pacheco or who it's going to be, but they will figure it out. Andy Reid will definitely figure out that situation.
I agree with that 100%. The last big topic we'll get to tonight, before we maybe do like some of your favorite like randoms or special values or things like that. I want to look at the playoff landscape for the NFL, and just wanted to see if you like anything specific in the make the playoff odds for 2025. Any specific teams that you like at their values, the way they're being marketed right now?
I mean, and we talk about this a lot. And Jeff Hartman, who I work with, and he's a little bit of a conspiracy guy. I'm not so much going to say this a little bit, but the NFL is an entertainment league. They do not like teams that lose every year and don't have good years. I mean, you could call it conspiracy, but the New Orleans Saints win the Super Bowl the year after Hurricane Katrina, and the stadium gets destroyed. Atlanta Falcons, we saw a similar situation with Michael Vick went to jail. The scheduling and the design of the schedule can help a team and can hurt a team, and I think it's intentional. Yeah. The NFL doesn't kind of shy away from this. They run the season 100,000 times on a supercomputer, and they want parity, right? So I think teams that you can get great value on, that I think have a good shot at being 500 or better, which would probably put them at making the playoffs. I think the Jets, a pretty strong play right now. I think quarterback situation is better to fit with that team. We've got a whole new feel in the locker room. They had a decent nucleus last year. They still got 5 wins, even they had that dumpster fire and firing coaches halfway through the season. So 8 or 9 wins for them. Maybe they make the playoffs. A team like the Browns, I know right now looks like a dumpster fire. A potential team that can make the playoffs, you get good return on right now. When we go down the list, though, in the AFC, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, there are a lot of teams. There's a lot of parity. Chargers, Denver, even the San Fran 49ers, a lot of parity. It's kind of tough to predict right now. When we get to the NFC, not much love from the NFC from Pez's picks, to be quite honest with you. I don't think the Saints are going to be any good. I don't think Carolina is going to be any good. I do like the Falcons and the Bucks. I think the 49ers, this could be a breaking point year. We have not been a Purdy fan at Pez's picks. We've bet against him a lot. Sometimes he's burned us, but I'm not sure if he's an elite quarterback. So I think the Rams have a question mark. Seahawks, of course, do. So in terms of making the playoffs, we're talking 500 or better. I think anybody that we're picking to be 500 or better when we take their season total should make the playoffs. The Bills, not a bad play, but
Yeah.
but you're not going to get good return on them. And that's kind of the
Right.
balance between picking and your investment.
Let me run a couple things by you. Just my thought process. See if I'm kind of on the right track here when I'm judging this. If I'm betting teams in the AFC, I'm kind of steering clear of anybody, like, unless I want a sure thing, anybody but the Chiefs from the AFC West, because the other three teams there, I could see any one of them being the second best team in that division. And probably all three, Denver, Los Angeles, and then the Raiders, probably all three kind of beating each other up across the course of a season as well. So if I'm looking on the AFC side, I like a team like Jacksonville in the AFC South. The only other good team in that division, technically, or I guess expectation wise, is the Houston Texans. They've got a new head coach who just led a dynamic Bucks offense. Baker Mayfield threw 40 touchdown passes last year. Trevor Lawrence and some of the upgrades that they've made on the offensive side of the ball. If Liam Cohen coaxes enough out of them to where things get interesting, I like them a lot, maybe at plus 180 for making the playoffs as a wild card team. Am I on the right track with maybe that thought process? What would you give me a grade on that, maybe?
Well, when we look at Trevor Lawrence, and a guy who had an injury last year, numbers were not good. 11 TDs, 7 picks. Not a guy that we bet on a lot, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if it's the coaching situation or he's not getting much help from running back. I mean, receiver, not too much help there either. So possibly with Travis Hunter, but then again, I'm not a guy that bets on rookies very often. Maybe
Sure.
at the running back position, we saw with Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. It is a very difficult transition to dominate in college and then do it in the NFL. Jaguars, I'm not a fan. Broncos,
Okay.
I don't like Sean Payton. I'm not
Okay.
sure that Bo Nix is the type of quarterback we saw last year. Phenomenal year, 29 and 12 picks. Sophomore year, it's called the sophomore jinx. We saw with C.J. Stroud. I'd be shocked if Bo Nix didn't take a step back this year. Chargers, puzzling. We will admit we lost a lot of money on the Chargers last year. I am not a huge fan, or I wasn't, of Justin Herbert. 23 touchdowns to 3 picks. Didn't throw the ball very much, though, 3,800 yards. I think that comes back to haunt this team a little bit this
Okay.
year. Is Najee Harris going to be able to carry that team if they're going to shut down that throwing game a little bit, potentially? I think the Colts are actually a pretty strong play if we're looking at the AFC North.
Okay.
I think the Colts, this is going to sound crazy, I think Daniel Jones ends up starting for that team. I think he's
Yeah,
a possible
I agree.
quarterback that could carry them to 500 or better. A guy who's, he's got a gun, and I think in a better situation, maybe can be a kind of quarterback that the Giants saw. They did. The Giants didn't just pick that guy because he didn't have any potential. Been in the league now for 7, 8 years. I kind of think in a smaller market, a guy like that might have some success, and you can get some good return on him. Looking for big things out of C.J. Stroud. A
Yeah.
tough year for him. Year two, why quarterback struggle? Everybody's got tape on them. They spend the whole year watching that tape. So pretty much every quarterback steps back year two. I think Stroud, this is a big breakout year for them. Maybe they can get a little more help in the offseason. I'm not so sure that they did that completely, but maybe they get another guy, maybe a veteran receiver. I like him a lot, and I like that team a lot.
I like the Texans a lot. They're fun on paper, and I mean, I don't know. Can you? Does anybody hate the Houston Texans? I don't think you can, right? They're the youngest team in the league. They're kind of fun. I don't know.
C.J. Stroud, one of the more exciting quarterbacks we've seen in a long time. I mean, even last year, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. That's not bad. I mean, it was a step down from the year before. I think that team, this is a big year for them. They're investing a lot of money in that kid, and they got to get over the hump a little bit here. And I think, when
Yeah.
we look at the NFC, Washington Commanders, same kind of situation. I think the Packers are in that situation. This is the year to prove it, right? I mean, you gotta put up or shut up at some point. I don't like the Bears, to be quite honest with you. I'm not
Okay.
so sure that that quarterback is an elite quarterback. I I don't think his size has helped him much. I think he struggled last year. He had happy feet in the pocket. When your feet aren't set and you have bad mechanics at quarterback, you're going to turn that ball over. You're not going to complete a lot of passes or both. And that's something that we look for in the betting world. When a guy's got happy feet and he's throwing off that back foot and he's always backpedaling, looking at the rush, we bet against guys like that. And we won a lot of money off of Caleb last year. Can he be better? New coordinator, new situation, potentially, but I'm not
Yeah.
banking on him either.
Okay. One
One
last
thing
team
we
I'll
will
ask you.
caution,
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
caution people, and one thing that we thrive on: rookie quarterbacks, bad investment. Always a
Yeah.
bad investment, rookie quarterbacks. Last year, that huge class of rookie quarterbacks did not have the type of success that we would have thought. Bo Nix a little bit more than people thought. Michael Penix Jr. I think is a quarterback that can do something, but
Yeah.
Caleb and
Jaden
some of these
Daniels
other guys,
obviously had the big season there, but yeah.
big year for Jaden. As an Eagles
Yeah.
fan, we don't like to celebrate him too much, though, Jeremy. But
Yeah. Yeah.
big year for him. Can he do it again? Can you put
Yeah.
back-to-back seasons out there? Is it another RG3 situation in Washington where this guy's elite, but they find something on tape to kind of shut him down? We'll have to wait and see. But I do not bank on rookie quarterbacks. I think that's a bad investment. It is an incredibly mentally difficult position. Maybe 15 people in the world play the NFL quarterback position
Yeah.
well, and that's a rare thing when you got about 8 billion people living on this big rock.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The last team I'll ask you about in this conversation is the New England Patriots. Second year quarterback who looked pretty good, especially towards the back half of last year. He got a lot of help this offseason when you're talking about offensive line. Stephon Diggs is there now, and we'll see if he ends up getting disciplined by the team or the league or anything like that for um, his boating stunt or whatever it was.
Pink cocaine,
um,
Jeremy.
yeah,
What is this
yeah,
pink cocaine? What kind of moron?
I don't know.
A video handing over a
Recording it.
questionable lady, a pink cocaine.
Yeah,
I after that incident, all over the Patriots right now. I love Rabel. I love the
yeah,
coach. I I love the atmosphere there. I
yep,
do think that I wasn't a huge Drake May guy, but he did by the end of the season kind of put up some more impressive games. I mean, if we look at his game log, by the end of the year, he wasn't turning the ball over as much.
right.
He did have a ton of picks though, and that's something that I think Vrabel, especially if we lean on the running back a little bit more, and they're not doing too great in that situation either. But I think that that's going to be a defensive team. They're not going to look for May to do too much. I think we could see New England kind of look like the Chargers did last year, where Herbert's
Yeah,
there to kind of be a guy that's not going to win the game, but he's not going to lose it either. We talk about
yep,
this a lot in Pez's picks. Once a team turns the ball over, their chances of winning go from 50-50 all the way down to about 32%, one turnover. So
wow.
any turnover is a death blow to winning and gambling. But I'm not going to be shocked if the Patriots get to 500, maybe make the playoffs. That wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, that coach bump from Vrabel, some of the help that they've given their young quarterback, they're going to be better on defense. I will say this: I would have liked it better if they were getting New York Jets or Tennessee Titans or even Las Vegas Raiders odds at the playoffs, but they're right in that Pittsburgh Steeler range, Atlanta Falcons range, and so I mean it's still plus money, right? It's still plus 152 right now on FanDuel. Um, but I would have liked it if maybe the football cognoscenti wasn't quite so high on the Patriots because I want to be really high on them, and I don't know if I can be as high as I want to be at that number necessarily.
Well, currently they're 8.5 season total. You're getting minus 115, so about regular odds, about
Yeah.
10%. You're losing juice. I think they get to 9 or 10 wins. They should be right in that mix, and I think that that's a reasonable thing. I think they've
Okay.
taken their shots and a refreshing guy, and that's an atmosphere. That's kind of like
Yeah.
Tomlin taking over in Pittsburgh. This is a guy that's been there. He's going to stabilize that team. A guy like a Dan Campbell kind of coach, a player's coach who's been there and has kind of street cred behind him, and I like him. And that guy's not a loser, right? He's not going there to
Right.
lose. I think 9 or 10 wins is a legitimate call for the New England Patriots this year.
I like it. Some backup to my bold prediction, which is that the New England Patriots will represent one of the wild card teams in the AFC this year. I like it.
I
Okay.
love it.
Before we wrap it, Pez, you got anything special you want to talk about before we go? Anything coming up for you on the podcast side that you want to plug? Any special bets that you think that you'd like to share? Anything before we go?
We're up here in Vermont, Jeremy. We're taking a little bit of
Yeah.
time off. NBA playoffs, we went about 66%, 20-11,
Nice.
4-1 in the finals. So dialed in. Baseball's giving us headaches, though. We're batting 500, Jeremy, but in the gambling world, that doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame like it does in baseball.
Right.
So we're looking to pump those numbers back up. It's been difficult. Baseball gambling is way harder than NFL gambling.
Sure.
It's a nightmare. It's
Yeah.
like going to the
I
track
couldn't
every day and having the racing book in your back pocket. But we do it for the people, Jeremy. We're here
Yeah.
to beat the house, and that's what we're going to continue doing. We'll have
Good.
more season totals at Pez's Picks. You can follow us on Instagram. Doing a new podcast with KT Smith from the Call Sheet called The Hot Route, where we talk about sports, gambling, life, or family, women, whatever it takes, Jeremy. We did a whole talk on Jaws last week. Jaws, 50
Nice.
years old. Making me feel old, Jeremy. 50 years old. Now, I wasn't old enough to see it in the movie, but
Sure.
what a classic, right?
Yeah. Well, let me say, I watched it on the 50th anniversary day for the first time. That's the first time I'd seen Jaws. So,
Oh, my God.
But a instant classic for me. It's a go back and watch it at some point. I loved it.
Jeremy, I grew up at the beach, so I've seen that movie about 9,000 times, and it gets better and better every time. Is there a stronger, manlier movie than Captain Quint? I mean, that guy, his death.
Yeah.
I did cheap shot him a little bit last week. He should have fought a little bit harder against that Jaws shark guy. I think he kind of gave in at the end, but at the end of the day, that's a man's man right there. That's a Pittsburgh Steelers type of fan right there, and a Philadelphia Eagles fan right there, Captain Quint.
Going out hard, man. That's the only way to do it.
in a blaze of glory.
That's right. Appreciate it, Pez. This has been fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
We're always here to hand out some gambling tips, and we're always here to help everyone beat the house, and look forward to getting back on here, especially during the season, and picking some winners.
Sounds good. You'll have to update me on some of your fantasy teams that you get involved with this year, and I'll hit you up for some betting advice this season as well.
Love to.
Sounds good, man. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Be sure to tune in to Fans First Sports Network for all your news, notes, and updates throughout the rest of the offseason for the NFL and all your favorite teams. That's going to do it for us. Until next time, keep drafting, everybody.